We're super excited to be here, and we're excited to be hosting a roundtable with you all after this downstairs. But because it's such a large format, we can't get into your hearts and minds, so we created a poll for you all. So if you can queue up the poll, we're wondering, oh, actually, one slide back. Where are you currently in your career? Are you in high school? All the way down to 4th plus job after school and everything in between. Oh wow, someone's real quick. How did such quick reflexes? My goodness. Go on to the next slide. And we've got a QR code. So for those of you who are sitting in the back, open up your camera, zoom in, aim it at this, or if you're on a computer, go on to pollev.com/GORICK.
This is so legit. I saw this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm underprepared for this today.
All right, I'm seeing a couple of people still aiming, so we're gonna give you another, 10 seconds? We've got more polls, by the way, so don't move away from that browser tab after you voted. We've got 2 more, I believe, polls coming up.
Love it.
All right, because
And while we wait for results, how's everyone feeling?
Yes.
Well, I didn't hear that. What was that? How is everyone feeling after today? All right, okay, so this is going to be highly engaging. We're going to ask a lot of questions, but most importantly, I personally, very selfishly, am an extrovert. So the more energy you guys give me, the more energy I'll give back, okay? All right? Woo! Woo! Okay, with that, did everyone get a chance to do this? It looks like everyone has
we want as many of you to participate as possible. But just because I can't help myself, let's queue up the next slide. Let's take a look. Ooh, what are you seeing, Jerry?
Oh, okay, so we got a lot of college students here.
High school, who are you?
High school student?
Ooh,
Oh my gosh.
You are way ahead. I don't know, you should be up here.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Awesome, and then we got fourth plus job after college. Cool, so we got a lot of college and also people who are later in their careers.
Very cool. This is helpful for all of us because we're going to be focusing our advice maybe on this segment as well as how you do well in your career. So this is super helpful for all of us. Let's do another question. Keep your... All right, here we go. We want to help you achieve your goals, whatever they may be. And so we're curious, what are you hoping to do next in your career? Are you looking to stay in your job, maybe get promoted, maybe do better, maybe do more, start your own, ooh.
Wow, that's incredible. How did you do this, Gorick? This is insane. Wow.
So I'm still affiliated with Harvard as a career advisor, and they have a free account, so
I love it, I love it.
Being scrappy and entrepreneurial here. Can't afford this myself.
I love it. So a lot of startup. We have almost 60% of the people want to start or join the startup.
And then we've got join another larger, doesn't have to be larger than your existing company, but just a larger company in general.
Mm-hmm.
Super interesting. Okay. Well, Jerry's started his own thing. He's worked at another place. We'll talk more about this shortly, but
yes,
relevant for us. All right, one more before we get on to the feature presentation. Let's go to the next slide. All right, this is an open-ended poll, completely anonymous. We're not tracking your location, we're not identifying you. But just in a few words, short sentence, longer sentence, go ahead and tell us, what are you struggling with most professionally / career-wise right now? And Jerry, why don't you tell us what's going through your head as you're seeing the responses up here?
Oh man, imposter syndrome, so real. I face that, especially coming from a first-generation low-income, Asian American, motivation, finding a job, macroeconomy.
The first gen thing, totally relatable.
Yes.
First in my family, go to college.
Family, yep. Stop using the excuses of not wanting to get started. Okay. I need to develop an industry expertise, direction, meeting people.
Just being here, that's good direction, and plenty of people here that you'll get to meet, hopefully at our roundtable after this.
Finding a specific ins and outs of networking on a high effective level, yep, and networking is so key.
So how Jerry and I met was through a cold email that I sent to him, March 2nd, 2021. So it works. That's why we're up here now.
Yeah, that's right. Passion versus compensation. Oh, okay.
Can I queue up a question about that?
Yeah, for sure. Trying to switch career path is struggling due to lack of experience. That hard to get an internship. Okay, we have Pac-Man here. Business with tech aspirations, growing my team, no time. This is a lot of good, really honest feedback. So thank you everybody for sharing.
So we asked you to share your thoughts. You're probably wondering, who the heck are we? He needs no introduction, but I'm curious, Jerry, give us 2 introductions. What do you do if you were talking to your grandmother? And what do you do if you were talking to an audience like this or on TV?
Okay, so hi everybody, or in this case, my grandmother. Hello, my name is Jerry, and well, you don't need to know my name, you already know my name. And I help people get jobs. So that is the simplified version, but the longer version here is I run a company called Wonsulting, where we help people get jobs, and we just launched a product this past month called ResumAI, where we can automatically generate resume bullet points for you with just free-form text. And outside of that, I also create content on LinkedIn, Instagram, and TikTok. It's a little bit about me.
You've got a tech-savvy grandmother. She knows TikTok, Instagram. I'm impressed.
Yeah, I combined both of the questions.
So we already revealed a few details about you. First-gen college student to content creator. Tell us what happened between then and now. What happened?
Yeah, so a background about my personal story, which will help set the foundation for what we'll be talking about today, is I come from a first-generation low-income background. And so my family was the first out of our entire family tree to come to the States. And growing up, it was financially really rough for our family. And so one thing that I always thought to myself growing up was I thought to myself, as soon as I get to college, I'm going to be financially independent, and I want to give back to my parents because of all the sacrifices that they've made for me. And if you come from an immigrant background, this might sound relevant or this might relate to you in a certain way. And so thankfully through mentors, organizations like Decode, and just sort of being pushed in the right direction, I became the first intern at Google from my school, Babson College. Anyone know Babson? A couple people, okay, all right, okay, thank you for 2 people raise their hand. And so shortly after Babson, I joined Google full-time, where I was there for about 3 years. I got promoted twice in about 2 years. Shortly after that, I managed a product strategy team at a company called Lucid Software. And then shortly after, I started my own company called Wonsulting, which is how I got connected to Gorick and the rest of the folks.
That's amazing.
And Gorick, but we do have a lot of similarities here. Gorick, tell me about you.
We do, yeah. So I'm the proud son of a working class single mother. She left school when she was 12 years old. And I learned to write my first resume when I was 14, 2 years older than she was when she started working for the first time. And so I spent recesses learning to write cover letters and resumes, afternoons at the public library looking for jobs, and evenings coaching my mom. And it was all just through trial and error. I didn't have Wonsulting. And I, applied to all these jobs but got 0 callbacks. And it wasn't until I arrived at Harvard as a first-gen low-income college student that I realized that my peers had just this very different upbringing from me. They had parents, mentors, older siblings who could pass down so much of this informal education around how to get jobs, how to succeed, how to communicate, how to network, that just aren't taught in school. And so when I looked left, looked right, and emulated the tactics of my peers, I then started writing down some of the things that I learned. And it was through that I started realizing, wow, no one's really written down what I think of as these unspoken rules. So, what if I could write them down? And so one conversation led to another, until I ended up interviewing over 500 people across geographies, industries, and job types that then became the Unspoken Rules, the book. So, a bit of a circuitous turn from political science major who actually didn't like writing very much to management consultant to then author today.
Wow, incredible. And how many of you, raise your hands, felt that way, where you might have gone into college, or maybe you feel that way today, and you look around your peers and you're like, oh my God, everyone else around me is so accomplished. They all have their stuff figured out, and I don't know, or I don't know how to navigate this. Has anyone ever felt that way? A lot of us, right? It's because nobody helps us ever think about resumes, cover letters. No one does that, right? You're expected to learn how to do that by the time you're a sophomore or junior in college, but you can barely figure out what you're gonna eat for breakfast the next day, right? And so that's a lot of what I love to talk about on my content and social media. That's exactly why I started Wonsulting and I left Google, but I'm sure we'll talk more about that.
Let's talk about how you got to Google in the first place. So, how did you make it happen?
Okay, I wish I had a really cool story to share with you. I wish I could be like, okay, I networked with these 6 people, then there was nothing like that. Honestly, all I did was, at the time, I wanted to be like Gorick and I wanted to work at McKinsey, Bain, or BCG. That was like my dream at that point. So I spent 99% of my effort networking with all these partners who didn't go to my school, which was horrible, so no one would ever respond to me. And then I remember looking on Handshake, the career portal at the time, and there was this Google Bold internship program that popped up. I was like, whatever, I'll try. And I remember there was a question, I was like, what makes you googly? And I literally wrote, I was like, there's no way I'm gonna get this. I literally wrote something along the lines of like, I really like Google Calendar. It really helps organize my life. And that was it. And then shortly after that, I got an interview and I was like, no way. And then I was like, whatever, I'm not gonna prep for this because I guarantee they're gonna destroy me. And then the final round came, and then I somehow got the offer. That was it. I wish that there was something more sexy or something more beautiful than that, but that was honestly it. The biggest thing I've learned in that exact scenario was throughout my entire life when I was in high school, I always thought to myself, no way I should apply for the Koch scholarship. No way I'm gonna apply for the Harvards. No way I'm gonna apply to UC Berkeley because I'm not good enough. I don't have high enough a GPA. Everyone else who I'm comparing myself to in college, they're so much, or in high school at the time, so much better than me. Therefore, I always thought to myself I was never good enough. Up until one point, some random company called Google was like, hey, maybe you do have something to offer here. And they very much took a chance. And so if there's one thing that I've absolutely have learned is just to literally try. If any one of you have, you are looking at a startup, you're like, oh my God, this startup, I would love to work for a startup. Or I would love to work for Gorick, or whatever. Reach out, apply, because you literally never know. And most of the time, when I speak with job seekers today, the number one thing I see is that they undersell themselves. But so yeah, that's my story.
So super interesting, because there's this contrast between applying for jobs, which we're encouraged to do, and then all the strategies that you share with us through your social media, which don't even involve the job application process. So is it just about what I did, which was go online, blindly click submit, and then hope for the best?
So that's what I did. That's what I thought in college. I called it to spray and pray. So I would literally go through every single job page, go through every single job 3 times a day, because I was like, if there's even a chance that I can get an interview, I'm gonna do it. But only till I realized after college this concept of networking. Who has heard of networking?
Who is scared of networking?
Now, who has actually networked with somebody? And the follow-up question is, who has kept up with that person still to this day? I love it.
Jerry, you have a story around this, don't you?
Yes. So as part of the work I do with Wonsulting, one of the things we did was we did a lot of these type of workshops. We did about 200 workshops in about a year, and we spoke to about 25,000 job seekers. I want you to guess, what percentage of those people still follow up with me today, despite my workshops all being around networking? Guess, just throw some numbers out there. What percent? 2 people, wow, okay.
2%.
2%, okay. Any other guesses?
3.
3.
1%.
1% or people? Or person? 1%, okay.
25,000 people.
Yep, 25,000 people, so what percentage?
20 people.
20 people? Pretty close. 1 person still to this day follows up with me after 3 years.
Not a percent.
Not even a percent. 1 person. And every single time I tell them the exact same thing. I'm like, I guarantee you, there's gonna be about 10% of you who are gonna follow up with me after the session. But there's gonna be 0% of you guys who will follow up with me after that session. And so now that this student, and this person who initially contacted me was a high school student, and this high school student now is a sophomore in college who's sort of updating me on their process. If this person ever asks me for anything, I will absolutely go out of my way to give that person that thing. Because this person has literally been so thoughtful enough to think of me as someone who has made even a small impact in their life, and for them to take the time to always follow up with me, unbelievable. Now, as someone who does a lot of workshops, who posts a lot on social media, this is sort of a blown up example. Now think about the recruiters. Think about hiring managers who don't spend their time on social media or who don't do workshops. How many people do you think, one, reach out to them? And second, most importantly, follow up with them? Almost none. Almost none. So that's one of the craziest things I've seen is that when I joined Google, immediately, the people I look at my leadership team, my president was an ex-partner at McKinsey. The person right below her, who was my VP, was her associate partner when she was at McKinsey. The person right below them, they worked together when they were at Harvard Business School. My manager, they somehow met at like a consulting get-together in Chicago. And I thought to myself, oh my God, like, how are these people finding these freaking jobs as like these crazy high employees? I guarantee it's not because they clicked apply online when they saw a job description. It's because they most likely have kept in touch, and keeping in touch doesn't even require more than 30 seconds of your time. Someone like Gorick, someone like Shuo, there are people that I look up to a lot. And so what I do is I set up, a quarterly, biannual reminder for me to reach out to them and say, hey, this is what I'm up to. This is what I'm doing, and I would love your advice on these 3 things that I'm working on. For each and every single one of you, if there's a recruiter, if there's a hiring manager that you've interviewed with, and let's say you don't get the job, God forbid you don't get the job, what should you do to those people? Not all at once. You should probably follow up, network, say, hey, listen, and thank you so much for the opportunity. Over the past 6 months, here's what I've learned, right? Here's what the projects that I've been working on. Because no job applicant does that. Gorick, is that similar to what you've seen in the industry?
Totally. So I was at Harvard Law School doing a workshop. And you'd think Harvard Law School, like Elle Woods, like very high achieving place, right? And I said to the audience as well, I can guarantee you that one of you, maybe none of you, will reach out to me afterwards. And one person reached out. So in every audience, regardless of the size, regardless of what institution they're at, there's just one person who does it. It's crazy.
Maybe they just don't like us, Gorick. That honestly, hey, I believe that. Honestly,
confounding variables to why they don't, right? So Jerry, when I've sent a lot of emails, and in the early stages, I would just stare at my draft and can't get myself to like push send, and I'm just reading and rereading and rereading. How do you write an email?
Has anyone ever felt that way? Where you're like, oh my God, I'm about to email ex-VP, this recruiter, right? You're like, oh my God, I'm shaking my hands as I'm raising my hand, right? The simpler, the better. You want to give three sentence summary of who you are. Space base. The space base is so important. There's one thing I've noticed about emails from high school students versus college. Sometime during that period, high school students, generally they'll just give me like 8 sentences, which is perfect for an email, but they'll just clump it in like this giant paragraph, and I'm like, oh my God. But then college students somehow realize that you just need to add these like little spaces, right? 3-sentence intro, who you are. Hey, I'm Jerry, I'm a current student at Babson studying business analytics. I've had interest in XYZ. And then you're asked 3, 4, 5 sentences of about like why you're emailing. One thing that I used to do that I thought was really clever on my end, but then I realized I got absolutely no responses, is I used to play this game of like, oh, well, like, I don't want them to know that I'm looking for a job, so I'm gonna be like, oh, I'd love to connect with you and learn about your growth at X company, and would love to hear about your experiences and XYZ. And no one replied to me. I was like, what? Like, why isn't anyone replying back to me? And then only after, until I started working, then I started saying, hey, I started sending LinkedIn connection requests, emails to every hiring manager and recruiter. I would just copy and paste. And the shorter I made it, the more concrete my answer was. Sure, my response rate was 1 to 10%, but whenever they would respond, they would either say yes or no, direct and straight to the point. And so that's one of the things I think I try to keep in mind whenever I'm sending an email or a connection request. Shorter the better, and make sure everybody add a little space between your 3 sentences.
I love that, yeah. I think there's something about English class that gets us to write things as long and as dense as possible.
Right,
yeah, somehow the real world just expects something super different.
That is so true. And I mean, that even applies to the emails that you send at work, right?
Yeah, I don't know if any of you have started working yet, but there's this law of the universe, I feel, where the higher up you go, the shorter your emails get. And then once you get to a certain level, it doesn't even make its way into the actual, body of the message anymore. It just shows up in the subject line, right? But then actually the focus goes from the length of the email to the capitalization of the words. And so you can get like, please fix, just in the subject line. So that's the growth that awaits you all. So here we're talking about the job search. What about just career strategy in general? How would you spend your time if you were some of the college students who are here today, who aren't yet there, who aren't thinking about graduation yet, who may not even know where they want to go? Talked about direction earlier. What should we be thinking about?
So who are those people who are college students maybe looking for an internship? A lot of you. Okay, cool. So one of the things I've noticed about job seekers, and this doesn't even pertain to college students, this goes across the board, even for people who are 10, 15 years into their career. If I ask you, what type of job do you want to go for? What should your response generally be? Anyone? Does anyone have a guess?
Is it the one that pays the best? Someone talked about passion versus compensation.
Oh, passion versus, man. Not always.
Okay, let's hear about it.
But one of the things that I've learned about sort of the job search is the main thing that you want to focus on, especially when you're early in your career, is to just choose one field and go deep in it. One of the things that I see all the time from job seekers are like, please, I'll take any job. I want to be an operations analyst, I'll be a software engineer, I'll be marketing, I will be your intern, I will literally do anything, please, right? And it's so true, right? Because some of us are just like, I just want a freaking internship on my resume, right? But one of the things that I've learned in the job search especially is that you want to have focus. And the beauty about your job search, that let's say you do have focus, let's say you want to go into data science, and you're going through this interview, you're like, oh my God, I cannot imagine myself doing this. Great, then just change your job search and focus on another job title. And so that's one of the most, and you don't even have to fully believe that you want to go into like product marketing, let's say that's your focus, because you very much as a student are maybe trying to get a product marketing internship. Recruiters understand that is not going to be your lifelong passion. Internships are meant for you to learn, for you to get experience, and for you to decide whether or not that's something you want to do. And I think that's pretty well understood. And so having focus, I think, is probably one of the biggest things I've learned about the job search and what you should think about when you're earlier in your career.
I love that. And one thing I'll add to this is it's okay to not know what you want to do with your life.
Yes.
One of my most memorable interviews for my book was with a superintendent on the eve of her retirement. And I asked her, I was thinking, have fun on the cruise or something like that, right? As the next thing I would say. And she said, and I quote, I still don't know what I want to do with my life. I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah.
But through exploring, I'm learning and I'm growing. And that's what life is all about. I'll stop when I'm dead.
Yeah.
End quote. So that's what she told me. And it was super enlightening. And it brought me back to something that a lot of UC Berkeley students who are in my class will know, this notion of diverging before you converge. One of the best things that I feel like I had done by mistake when I was in your shoes was I signed up for every email list. I signed up for a whole bunch of clubs. I showed up, and then I just ditched them. as time went on, and as I figured out, hey, these are the people that I want to hang around. These are the people that I find really inspiring. This is where I'll be able to pad my resume. This is where I'll get some good experience. And so diverge. It's okay to sign up for all these email lists. It's okay to sign up for all these events. But go in there with the intent of testing a hypothesis about yourself, of where do you want to work? How do you want to work? What do you want to work on? One of the things I'll share briefly, one of the best jobs that I've ever had was actually as the head of a dry cleaning business on my college campus.
Wow.
So I have a college roommate who knew from day one that he wanted to enter the financial industry. And if you want to do that, you can go super deep. So he was head of the finance club. He had gotten winternships. I didn't even know that was a word.
Yeah, I only learned that like 2 years ago, and I was like, I'm done. I'm done.
Yeah, I didn't know that internships could have a W in front of
Yeah.
it. Like, so he had multiple. He had internships, plural, and they were all in finance. And I thought to myself, you know, if I wanted to go down his path, like I now have a formula. I should really focus on one area. But I frankly don't know. So what if I walk away after college thinking, you know what, I actually don't know if I want to do this anymore. So the way that I double dipped, triple dipped, actually quadruple dipped, was I signed up for this dry cleaning business because what did it allow me to do? Well, one, it allowed me to run a team. It allowed me to run a business that had, I think, $700,000, $800,000 in revenue every year. And I didn't even know what the word revenue was, but now I could put on my resume and it's
That's right,
like a dollar sign, like I ran a business. I could lead a team. I managed a budget, also something I didn't know about. I got paid. That was important for me as a first gen.
Yeah.
And then when I showed up at these interviews and at these coffee chats, I was able to say, hey, I haven't done the internships. However, what I've seen is how numbers work in business. In fact, I've run a business.
I love that. And
I see some nods.
So we recently hired someone on our team, and this person, their only experience has ever been in coffee. They worked in a coffee shop, like a local, very niche coffee shop. They know everything about coffee, and then eventually they were sort of a team lead and ran the operations for a coffee business. And so when I was interviewing him for a full-time position in our role, for an ops manager role, I was like, I don't understand the story. How can someone who's just passionate about coffee want to be in a career development space? How does that make any sense? And so the way he explained it to me, this is probably the best interview answer I've ever got. He said, making a resume is very similar to how you make coffee. You need to have someone else on your team do it. There's sort of a structure and formula that people need to follow when they make a cup of coffee. And when you break away from that, the coffee can be too bitter, too watery, or maybe it could even be the wrong temperature. And if you do that, it dilutes the brand of that niche coffee shop that they had. And so very similarly, as I think about your guys' business and the way that you guys operate, I think about that in the exact same way. You guys have a very list of best practices for a resume, and you have to create and make sure people follow a system to create that. And when I heard that, I was like, I just want to end the interview there. I was like, I want to give you an offer, but I didn't want to sound too I want to play the game a little bit. And so I was like, okay. Any questions for me? I was like so blown away. He's so smart, but that's exactly right what Gorick is saying.
I love that. I also love Mad Libs. I don't know if you all remember this growing up in elementary school. It's a fill-in-the-blank exercise where you can create your own story. So what I think I hear from you is, and we can all do this actually, is A is just like B. The only difference is C. But having done A, that makes me even more qualified to do B for all of these different reasons. So it doesn't matter if you were a babysitter. Babysitting is just like, anyone? Anyone give a shot?
Online streaming.
Online streaming, the only difference is?
That your clients are older.
The only difference is I like that.
Yeah. Honestly though, as long as you all, and who here wants to break into a field, but maybe you don't feel like you have the education or experience to do so? A lot of you, right? And so the way that's relates to the jobs is every job breaks down to two things. Either the function, aka marketing, sales, analytics, and the industry. tech, healthcare, whatever. The way that you can make this applicable to your job search is, let's say that you've never done an analytics background and you really want to be a data analyst. But maybe you have experience doing a project where maybe you did a statistics class. And so, yeah, maybe you haven't created business recommendations as a result of looking numbers, but you absolutely have made meaning out of numbers through your statistics class projects. So, in a way that you would pitch a career story would be, listen, I don't have data analytics background, but what I do have is I have experience making meaning out of numbers through my statistics projects. Let me tell you an example. Similar to how what you were saying?
I love that. I love that. So we promised that we would make this interactive, and so I don't want to monopolize over the questions that get asked. If anyone has any questions, just raise your hand. Oh, we already have one. Please.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to run up, right?
All right, here we are. Thank you. So what I found, yeah, I'm gonna give it back to you. What I found interesting is that you said that the response rate increased when the LinkedIn outreach messages were shorter, right? How does this work with the overall notion that you should personalize your message? Because it's obviously harder if you don't start with, oh, I've read this and that, and you've read this and that, That's a personalized message, but it takes up all the characters. So how do you get these two together? How do you work with the trade-off?
Great question. And for the audience, what is your name?
Julius.
Julius. All right. Thank you for the question, Julius. So the way that you do it, for everybody, LinkedIn messages is not free, but LinkedIn personalized invites are free. So a LinkedIn personalized life hack. Yes. So you don't have to pay for LinkedIn Premium. And so if you click connect on any LinkedIn profile today, let's say a recruiter or hiring manager, it'll ask you two buttons. It'll say send or add a note. If you click add a note, you have a 300 character limit. And so to your question, Julius, what should you add that in? Yeah, you don't want to copy and paste a message. You say, hi, recruiter, I am looking for a job in data science. Would love to connect. Thanks. I think it's important for you to say, hey, Gorick, I was on your guys' page. I saw that you guys are hiring for a data analyst intern for the summer. Would love to chat to see how I can be a fit or something similar like that. And so I think that's the level of customization and directness you want to be. What I don't think helps as much is if you're trying to play the game that I used to play and being like, hey recruiter, I'd love to hear your story of how you ended up as a recruiter, even though I'm really interested in analytics. Because a recruiter's gonna look at this and go, wait, you're interested in my story of how I became a recruiter, but your tagline says seeking data analyst internship. So you want it to make sense. And the worst case, what is the absolute worst thing that will happen if you send a message? And what's the best thing that will happen? A reply that can lead to a job. And how many jobs do you need?
One.
That's it. Maybe two. Oh. Yeah. Overemployment's a whole other con.
Yeah.
But does that help?
Yeah.
Great question.
We have another question in the back. Yes.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jerry. You talked about
Gorick.
the. Oh, sorry.
No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'll stop.
You're good.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, my question with regards to the importance on maintaining relationships, like you said, following up with someone biannually or quarterly, how would you structure that? Because oftentimes it's hard to think of what do I say to them if if I don't have any updates or if nothing has changed, how do I maintain that relationship?
Man, I wish I could cast my phone so I could show you the emails that I would send my connections. But anyways, and what was your name again?
Sahil.
Sahil. Thank you for the question, Sahil. So the way I structure my emails, super simple. I don't want it to be an essay where someone's gonna go, oh my god, and just report my email as spam. What you want to do is 2-3 sentences of what you've been up to. Hey, Gorick, how are you? It's been a while since we last spoke. Since the last time we spoke, I know we talked about how I should post more content on TikTok. And as a result of your advice, I actually started posting every single day for a year, and I grew to 3,000 followers. Thank you. I appreciate the advice. That was like maybe 4 sentences. Next paragraph is to say, maybe an ask, or maybe a question, or like a discussion point. One thing I was curious about though, is when should you start building out a team? Well, what should I do for brand reaches out? Would love to sort of pick your brain. And you don't even have to give an ask. You could very much just say, would love to just hear how things are going on your end. And you don't have to have any crazy updates. It could very much be, hey, I just wrapped up my second semester of my sophomore year. I actually took like X, Y, Z classes. This is the most important thing I learned. What have you been up to? I think it's the most important thing is I think you wanting to maintain that relationship more so than it is the actual content of the email is what I found to be helpful. Or what do you think?
I'm going to frameworkize what you just said. So you can share a status update, short one. You can express gratitude. You can also share information that may be relevant given a prior conversation that you had. Actually, we did that to each other.
Yes.
So one of us found an article and then texted it to the other person and said, oh, I came across this article recently, thought of our conversation, just thought I'd share. Hope you're doing well. So try these 3 things with anyone you've met, former professor you want to stay in touch with, former coworker, anybody.
Does that help?
Yeah, a lot. Thank you. Awesome.
Maybe a follow-up question.
Follow-up question, and then we'll go over here.
So, I'm from Germany. We have this strong culture. If you reach out to someone without having a specific purpose or not saying what you want, they will be very weirded out by it. So this idea of following up without having too much concrete content seems kind of strange for me, and I'm wondering how the perception is. Maybe if you get a message like that, what do you think? How do you perceive that?
Yeah, so I think the big asterisk here is that there are definitely cultural implications that you should think about if you're doing this across countries. And so that is the big caveat here. But for me personally, for example, this high school student who's been reaching out to me for the past 3 years, sometimes, like very shamefully, I don't even reply to his email because I genuinely forget. But sometimes I'll read it and I'll feel joy because I'm like, wow, this person is doing extremely well. And so for me, if that is my biggest takeaway, where it just, as I'm working throughout the day, at 12 p.m. I get an email, I read this and I go, wow, I'm so happy for him. That to me is something I'm personally okay with. And so generally when people follow with me and I engage with them, I generally want to see them succeed. And so to me, that's the type of thinking that I personally go through. Do you have any thoughts for that, Gorick?
I gave my mic away, so whoever has it, keep it safe. Thank you. A friend of mine went to business school, wants to work in entertainment. Is this on? Hope it is. Hope you all can hear me. Went to business school, wanted to work in entertainment. Realized that his business school program set him up to be a consultant, not an agent in Hollywood. However, he found a conference, not unlike a Decode conference, and sat beside an agent, struck up a conversation, and followed up with a thank you email, which you should all get into the habit of doing. He then expressed gratitude and did so on about an annual basis and just said, I really appreciate your advice on this area. Thanks to your wisdom, I did this. I'm looking forward to this. Hope you're doing well. No need to respond. Just wanted to keep you in the loop. 5 years later, this agent, who initially said, oh, sorry, we're not hiring, we're looking for someone with a different background, which is basically code for you don't have enough experience, relevant experience, so come back when you're famous or something. 5 years later, she was on the verge of retiring, and as her last hurrah, wanted to bring someone into the business who was underrepresented. Who was top of mind? You can be sure that this person wasn't going through LinkedIn and being like, okay, let's browse through the thousands of profiles and see who has the best profile. She picked the person who was most top of mind. And that person ended up being this individual. So he got a phone call. 2 weeks later, became an agent in Hollywood. Now, survivorship bias, right? I didn't do well in economics class, but I did well enough to remember that. Or is it psychology class? I didn't do well in general, clearly. So when it comes to these stories, right? Yeah, you can kind of poke holes and say, well, that's just one of many stories. But the thing is, you really never know. you really never know. Question over here.
Hi, Jerry and Gorick. I'm Michelle, and
Hi, Michelle.
Thank you. I think Jerry mentioned something about undersell ourselves, and could you please expand on that? Is that like part of like we don't represent ourselves enough in the job search? I've also heard like people suggesting me that fake it until I make it, and then I would like love to hear about your opinion on that.
Yes, me being up here, so Gary, I don't know why they chose me. I was like, like all these other crazy speakers, I'm like, I don't know why I'm here. So absolutely fake it till you make it. But the thought about underselling yourself, like I just did right now, but one of the things that I've learned sort of throughout my career is I had a very strong tendency, especially coming from an Asian American background, is I always thought to myself, well, I keep my head down. I don't want to be too loud. I don't want to ruffle too many feathers, because if I do that, that goes against the very thing that I was taught and brought up to do. So as a result, I never wanted to oversell myself or even talk about the great accomplishments that I had, because I always thought to myself, oh, well, that's going to put too much spotlight onto me. I don't really feel too comfortable with that. But one of the things I've learned, especially during my first year at Google, that had led me to getting promoted in my first promotion cycle, was that everyone else who was getting promoted, and I think the promotion cycle happened a month after I started, and so I got a list of everyone who got promoted, and I basically talked to them. I was like, so what did you do that got you promoted? Every single person said, you know what, I just put professional makeup on my performance review. I was like, what does that mean? And so what they would do is they would say, instead of just me saying I cleaned the data for 6 months, what I would say is I cleaned the data with this engineering team, which as a result had helped create these models that caught bad actors in the Google Ads environment at scale. And so when you think about these two types of ways you pitch yourself, did you clean data or did you enable another team and for them to create machine learning models, which couldn't have happened if your work didn't exist? Which of those sound a little bit better? And so that's one of the things I've learned very quickly when I was just sort of going through my rounds of people who got promoted in the cycle, is they always oversold themselves. They always put professional makeup. They never lie. You just want to be factually correct. But
I love that. And our Decode volunteers have been so great at letting us know that we're out of time, that they've actually moved the sign closer to the center of the stage than we see. However, there it is. So we've been warned, we have 1 minute left, probably 10 minutes ago. Two things as I wrap a bow, or attempt to, around Jerry's advice, which I 100% agree with, which is, one, sell yourself. What is the difference, though, between selling yourself and overselling yourself? Well, if I told you that I think I'm beautiful, my mom might think I'm beautiful, but that's not credible, right? Unless I told you, I don't know, I was Miss Universe, or I was on the cover of GQ. There's a difference there in how I sold myself, because one is a self-assessment. One also requires adjectives, like I'm really smart, or I'm really beautiful. But if there's an external benchmark, then it's not me saying I'm beautiful, it's the world saying I'm beautiful. You can do that professionally as well. So there's a difference between saying, I just cleaned data, and saying I contributed to this project. The second thing I want to say is when it comes to selling yourself, and this is true for the resume as well, a lot of your content, I encourage all of you to follow Jerry, is all about reframing your bullet points from going from the tasks that you did to the contributions that you made. So if you imagine for a second that you're going up on stage to win the Nobel Prize, what bio are they going to share about you? Are they going to say that, oh my goodness, Jerry pipetted really well? He pipetted 1,500 times? No, the bio is going to say he contributed this to the field. Just as you will have contributed to the team, to the department, to the company. And it's important to reframe your bullet points in that same way too. To be continued. That sign is continuing to move to the center. And so please join us downstairs. Before we do that, for those of you who are still on that poll everywhere, We've got some email templates, we've got some more resources to share with you all. So if you're interested and you have your phones out, please go ahead, give us some feedback in the session, and we'll send you some more resources. At least three of you will get those resources. But thank you so much. Jared, you got the last word.
Yes, thank you everybody for coming here, for sharing your time with us. We appreciate it. We'll continue the conversation. I have one more question. Can I put you all on my Instagram?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pan over and you guys can just say whatever you want. Just don't, no weird things, all right? I'm looking at you, all right? Okay, ready? 3. I'm gonna first do myself and then I'll pan over to you guys, okay? Hi everybody, I'm here at Decode.
Go Bears!
Go Bears! Thank you everybody.
Thank you all.